Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me to discover the truth beneath the surface. So, tonight I'm going to provide a situation update analysis, and I really appreciate everybody taking the time to listen. I really appreciate all the support from so many of you. God bless each and every one of you. So, let's jump in. Now, normally during the week, I really don't make this many podcasts because I'm normally a little bit too busy. But quite frankly, this has been such an amazingly intense news week that this has really been an exception for me to crank out this many podcasts. And actually, it's really great to have the opportunity to have an audience to be able to voice all of the reactions that I'm having to everything that's surrounding us, and hopefully give voice to some of the things that you're thinking about as well. So, of course, the big news of the day is that Kyle Rittenhouse was acquitted, which, of course, was a major victory. And to be clear, I have expressed, even though I have expressed some doubts about the narrative, if in fact the narrative is true, and honestly I said that I was kind of on the fence about it, but if in fact the narrative is true, then I don't think for a second that Kyle deserved anything other than the just verdict that was delivered today. I think everybody probably understands that, but I just wanted to be very, very clear about that. And to be honest, when I watched his emotional reaction to the verdict, it made it a lot harder to believe that he's not genuine. And some people really, I think, misunderstood my commentary on the case as an attack on Kyle, when really, in reality, it was, at least from my perspective, it was an examination of the narrative as a whole. And yes, a part of that narrative was exploring some suspicion about the possibility that the narrative could be, there could be more to it than they're actually telling us. And I still hold to that opinion to some degree. But at no point did I criticize the self-defense actions that he took. And that really, in essence, is what this case, whether the narrative is true or not true, the case itself was about the right to self-defense, the Second Amendment. And ultimately, this was a huge win, really, for justice in America. And so I think it's very, very, it's a historic day in that sense. I mean, and honestly, I have to say, I'd be very, very disappointed and disheartened if I found out at some future date that there was more to this story. Because after witnessing what I saw and having the emotional response that I had, I mean, I would be very, very disappointed to find out otherwise. And really, the crux of my suspicion about this case had more to do with the unarmed men attacking an openly armed one. But the bottom line is that I do believe that this case was very, very important. I mean, clearly it was important. Even Trump congratulated Kyle Rittenhouse. I mean, it's really an amazing moment, I think, for patriots. And I think that is, I'm sharing that moment with all of you. So I think it was a godsend that he, first of all, that he had a judge, a good judge, who wasn't playing ball with this prosecutor. And also, thank God, he had a jury that was ultimately delivered a just verdict. So I think this was a massive, massive day. And I'm really, really thrilled that for once, patriots feel as if they have a day where they can celebrate justice. And as far as I know, at this point anyway, it's, what is it? It's roughly about 7:30 on the East Coast. And I've heard and actually posted some information about planned protests, but I actually haven't heard of any rioting going on or anything like that. So hopefully that remains the case. We'll have to see. But I mean, it would be a wonderful thing if justice was served, if the narrative was actually on the up and up and true, and this story was delivered to us as it actually happened, and we actually are witnessing justice. That's an amazing, I think it really is it's a sea change in America, because this, of course, I mean, this is a massive case. It's a high profile case, not just in America, but all around the world. I think people are paying attention to this case and what it represents. So I'm not taking this as a light moment. This is a really significant moment. And amidst the backdrop of all this, of course, we all know that the fake Biden administration is now in complete disarray. And with every passing day, we're witnessing the devolution process accelerate on all fronts, and specifically with regard to the White House itself. I mean, it's becoming increasingly obvious that Biden is not going to finish his term. I mean, just today he went and got a colonoscopy at Walter Reed and transferred power to Kamala Harris. I mean, all you have to do is watch Biden. Just watch him try to string a sentence together, and you know that this clown is in no position to be president of the United States. And there's no way that he's going to finish out his term. I think they're laying all the groundwork right now. In fact, it seems to me that Biden is the most coherent when he's making inappropriate comments to children. I think it was just yesterday or the other day he offered to show a young girl around the White House. Hey, see me after this. I'll show you around the White House. I mean, how many times have we seen creepy Biden do this? I mean, it's amazing. It's absolutely amazing, this clown show that we're witnessing, that old Joe's pedo tendencies are the only thing that activate his remaining two brain cells. And there are so many people out there who actually still, in some way, shape, or form, support this guy. And for those of you out there who don't believe it, trust me when I tell you, because I'm surrounded by these people. But truthfully, folks, as I've said it all along, this is not the real Joe Biden. I mean, this is an actor whose job it is not just to portray him, but to continually force the public to confront who he really is behind that shit-eating grin, quite honestly. And the longer this goes on, the more people realize the illusion that they've been living under, and the worse it gets for the enemy. And that's when the real infighting begins, which is what we're witnessing right now on the surface level of this horrible movie. But as the cabal continues to lose control of their centuries-old ability to deceive the masses, and we see their behavior becoming increasingly desperate and erratic. And I've already discussed in some detail on previous podcasts how Trump and the White House essentially cut the head off of the snake back in 2017 and 2018, taking out the top, or most of the top bloodline families, leaving the enemy without any direction or without any leadership for the first time in history, really. And since that time, the mid-level players have been engaged in constant efforts to derail the implementation of the worldwide financial reset, ushering in NESARA and GESARA, and of course to kill as many of us as they possibly can before their time is up. And they know their time is coming to a close, especially at the higher levels. The higher up you go in the cabal, the more they understand exactly how limited their time is. And I do believe that time is drawing close. I mean, we've seen numerous reports surfacing that indicate that Kamala Harris is going to be replaced due to increasing tension and infighting within this fake administration. And this has also caused an awful lot of speculation about, if that were to happen, who would replace her? Or if Biden were to step down, or the 25th Amendment were to be used. Well, let's just go with this one example first of Kamala Harris being replaced. I mean, who would replace her? And many patriots, including our very own Soaring Dove, have suggested that this might actually just be the delivery mechanism of the real gut punch that we've been expecting if Hillary is brought in to be vice president. And I know just hearing that makes my skin crawl. It makes my teeth grind together. Boy, would that be a gut punch, wouldn't it? And now, I mean, if we consider this potential scenario for only a moment, and we can see quite clearly what would be the game plan. You'd have Hillary Clinton brought in. Biden faces the 25th Amendment, steps down otherwise, And she ascends to the presidency, possibly even choosing Obama as her VP. Wouldn't that be just rich? And I'm not saying that, I'm not trying to put it lightly, folks. I mean, at this point, because the Patriots are already on a hair trigger, let's just be honest, uprisings would begin all across the nation immediately if she got anywhere near the presidency or the White House. I mean, and that would actually really force the military to step in, not to oppress we the people with tanks in the streets, but rather to liberate we the people by arresting a sitting president and perhaps vice president as well. And this would undoubtedly shock the world and would fulfill Q's prophecy. And I can remember listening to Juan O'Savin say many times that when we're in the eye of the storm, it's going to feel like all hope is lost. And this leads me to believe that this potential devolution scenario would coincide with the military engagement we've been told to expect, likely with China and or Russia, and all the military posturing and maneuvering and saber rattling and drills that we've witnessed strongly suggest that this could be the direction that we're headed. I mean, do you remember all of Hillary's saber rattling about nuclear war with Russia during the 2016 campaign? Do you remember when we all rejoiced when Trump was elected because we all intuitively understood that we had avoided the path of destruction that she wanted to take this country down, and she was hell-bent. And now fast forward. At this stage of the game, if she got into power, if Obama got back into the White House somehow, it would feel like all hope was lost, wouldn't it? Now, obviously, we have to address the concerns that patriots have about this potential scenario. This is a very, very dangerous plan. And certainly an awful lot of things could go wrong because, as I mentioned, and as I've been discussing quite frequently in recent episodes, a great many patriots are running on fumes. They're literally running on the fumes of their remaining patience right now and their remaining restraint. And there's barely anything left. And so my concern is that if this pantomime is allowed to continue much longer, and this is the plan for the climax of this horror show, this movie, this pantomime, whatever you want to call it, this military continuity of government devolution operation, that's what it really is, has the potential to spiral completely out of control because patriots will not sit on their hands once they see this unfold. And as I've repeatedly said, the Q plan was always to restore the republic without civil war. And that once this fight becomes kinetic, now it could be that my assessment is not 100% correct. And it has occurred to me that perhaps some fighting amongst we the people is inevitable. A lot of people have that opinion. And it could potentially be the trigger to deploy the military after all. And perhaps it would appear under these circumstances that the military's purpose was to quell the rebellion of patriots, and then just at the last moment, when all hope appears to be lost, boom, flip happens. And instead of rounding up all the patriots, you got the military, you got the Marines, you got the special operators ready to move in to perform mass arrest. And this would be the sweetest poetic justice. And would very much qualify, by the way, as a Book of Esther type of reversal event. as the cabal are hoisted on their own petard, going back to all of Juan's metaphors and biblical stories. And they get a reservation at the FEMA camps on their way to Gitmo, or their appointment with the firing squad, the same FEMA camps that they intended to use on us. Now, switching gears a little bit, I was watching Mike Adams, his recent interview with David Wilcock. Really, really great interview. It was on Before It's News at #1 for like days. I mean, it was a really, really amazing interview. And he believes that David Wilcock, he was talking about in this interview, he was talking about it. He believes that military tribunals have been underway for quite some time. All right, now we've heard this from various different sources. Simon Parks has talked about it, Charlie Ward, Gene Decode. Now, of course, we have David Wilcock, and there have been others as well who have talked about these military tribunals that have been going on behind the scenes and have been underway for months now. And according to David's inside sources, or one of his inside sources, well, this guy, whoever this source is, claims to have seen video of the tribunals. And he actually talks about in the video of these tribunals, in many cases, the individuals that are being accused are not present in the video. And so what's happening is that they have these grand juries that have been assembled, and they've been listening to the presentation of all the evidence. And if they believe that the accused is guilty, an indictment is produced as a result. And I thought that was very, very interesting intel. He went on to discuss, basically in a larger sense, the planetary awakening that's been taking place. And really the necessity of shattering the illusion of what most people believe to be reality. Even all of us at one point in our lives. So he was talking about how humanity as a whole needed to be prepared during this very dark period that we're living through right now, for the consciousness to be able to accept the disclosure which is coming, which we know, by the way, is also vital to our ascension, this whole process. But our consciousness needed to be prepared to be able to accept this disclosure because, I mean, particularly with regard to the really dark stuff, the satanic ritual abuse, the vampire liquid. I think folks know what I'm talking about. I got to camouflage a little here. The sale of human beings. And, of course, their remains on the dark web. I mean, these truths, folks, are so horrific that in order to be accepted collectively by humanity, humanity had to be brought to the brink of its own destruction so as to fully unveil and uncloak the evil amongst us. And not just the evil amongst us, but the depth and the depravity of it all. And as we've already established, part of this near-death experience is the thing that goes in your arm itself. And during this interview, David he made the assertion that he believes that the Alliance would never allow, or would never have allowed, the rollout of the jab if they didn't have a counter move, if they didn't have an antidote that was ready to be deployed in the wake of the disclosure, and that the thing that goes in your arm was indeed a bioweapon with the objective of depopulation, as we all know. Now, obviously, we've been told by Q that the ending isn't for everyone. And it's been well established, it's been well documented that millions all around the world have already died and or experienced horrific, and I mean horrific, life-changing adverse reactions. And these are the ones that we know about. These are the ones that we actually have access to, that they're not burying. And I know, for a lot of people, that raises the question, why did the Alliance allow so many to die? And, listen, without rehashing all the episodes that I've done on this very topic, the strategy behind the jab, Operation Warp Speed, of course, and all the other hidden objectives of the White Hats as a part of this whole operation, suffice to say that this was necessary by virtue of it being the lesser of two evils. Plain and simple. It was either sacrifice millions by going with this strategy, or losing billions, or really the wholesale. That's probably what we were looking at if we went with option B. But in addition to that, there's even more to consider. When the mainstream media is taken down, the EBS comes on, the blackout happens, and the truth is revealed about what they willingly had themselves jabbed with. Well, that's going to be a near-death experience, literally. For however many people actually got the jab. I mean, how do you know? You trust the mainstream numbers? I certainly don't. But I also believe it really had to be this way in order to finally get the attention of all these brainwashed zombies out there. They needed to understand, in the wake of all this, that had God not intervened using the tool of the Alliance and the Patriots, they would have been murdered by the very same people, the very same quote-unquote leaders whom they so loved, admired, respected, protected. That's not going to be an easy mental shift, folks, an easy transition. It's almost like we've been trying to warn our brothers and sisters to not drink mother's milk, which they trust completely. They aren't going to listen until the poison takes hold, because they can't imagine mama's intentions are evil. But in due time, as mother's actions and erratic behavior become increasingly impossible to ignore, you are here. And at the same time, they start to become sick, all these people. Then they suddenly start to understand that this was never their mother feeding them all along. It was some evil force posing as their mother. And then they begin to desperately seek for the truth. It's going to be 100% vital to their very survival, folks. And that will be the Great Awakening. And it'll be our moment to rise to the occasion and to assist our brothers and sisters, our fellows, by guiding them through the learning and really, first, the healing process. But as they say, experience is the best teacher. So if the lesson is a difficult one to learn, the learning process must be a painful one. All right, folks, I'm going to leave you here. Hopefully you enjoyed this update tonight. Please let me know in the comments. I'll be back soon. Hopefully tomorrow I'll be doing a coffee chat, so you'll be hearing from me very soon, God willing. I do appreciate all of the support. Make sure that you subscribe to all of the different platforms I'm on: YouTube, BitChute, Rumble, and Podbean. Please do everything that you can to support the show. Godspeed. I love each and every one of you. Patriot out. Patriot out.